So we'll have small kirtan before the class actually. Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe Radha Madan Mohan Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe Jaya Mahaprabhu 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 Jaya Mahaprabhu Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Ya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Ayago Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hariharaye Nama Krishna Yadavaye Namaha Yadavaye Madhavaye Keshavaye Namaha Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana Gopal Govind Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rup Shri Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dhasa Raghunatha He Chai Goshai Kori Charana Vandan Yaha Hote Vigyana Shabishta Puran He Chai Goshai Yara Mui Taradasa Tansabara Paderenu Mora Panchagrasa Tandera Charana Sevi Bhakta Sannivasa Janame Janame Ho Ye Abhilasha He Chai Goshai Yabe Vraja Koila Vasa Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Kurilo Prakasha Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majiya Mana Shri Guru Vaishnava Pada Padma Koriyasha Nama Sankirtana Kohe Narottama Dasa Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nittai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nittai Gaura Haribol, Nittai Gaura. Nittai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nittai Gaura Haribol, Nittai Gaura. जय श्री राधा मदन मोहन की, जय श्री श्री लक्ष्मी नरसिंहदेव भगवान की, जय महाप्रभु की, जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय. Hare Krishna. So today I was thinking we'll read from the Nectar of Instruction. So Srila Rupa Goswami has given us this concise 11 instructions in the Upadeshamrita, which actually covers right from what is fundamental to all the way up to what is at the topmost level of realization. So within just 11 verses, Srila Rupa Goswami has summarized the different levels. Like the first verse talks about sense and the mind control and the controlling different urges. So he starts from there, and then he goes on to talk about the 6 things which destroys bhakti, 6 things which engender bhakti, and then how the dealing should be amongst the devotees, and then ultimately what is the goal of, what is the essence of all advice. He talks about that, and then he glorifies Srimati Radharani and Radha Kund as the embodiment of devotion, and how supremely it's dearmost to Sri Krishna, both Srimati Radharani and Har Kunda actually. So he glorifies that. So in these 11 verses you can just find everything that is required for a beginning sadhaka to all the way to a person who is advanced. In these 11 verses you can find instructions for everyone. So he summarized, Srila Rupa Goswami has summarized it so brilliantly. So we will pick one verse from the Nectar of Instruction. Of course we will correlate it back and forth with the Bhagavad Gita. So it is text let's see, text 8 of Nectar of Instruction. Yeah, there is a Sanskrit. So I'll repeat the Sanskrit and then you can repeat after me. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtanano smrityo kramena rasana manase niyojya tishtan vraje tadanuragi jananugami Kalam nayeda kilamiti upadesha saram. Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtanano. Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya. Tishtan vrajeta dhanuragi jananugami. Kalam nayeda kilagiti upadesha saram. Anybody would like to recite?
Tannamarupacharitadi sukirtanano.
Tannamarupacharitadi sukirtanano.
Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya.
Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya.
Tishtan vrajetad anuragi jananugami.
Tishtan vrajetad anuragi jananugami.
Kalam nayedhakilam iti upadesa saram.
Kalam nayedakila iti upadesha saram.
Tannamarupa charitadi sukirtanano.
Tannamarupa charitadi sukirtanano.
Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya.
Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya.
Tishtan vrajetat anuragi jananugami.
Tishtan vrajetad anuragi jananugami.
Kalam nayedhakilam idi upadesha saram.
Kalam nayedakila iti upadesha saram.
Tannama charitadi sukirtanano.
Tannama rupa charitadi sukirtanano.
Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya.
Smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyojya.
Tishtan vrajetad anuragi jananugami.
Tishtan vrajetad anuragi jananugami.
Kalam nayedhakilam iti upadesha saram.
Kalam nayedakila iti upadesha saram. Translation. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to His devotional service. Yeah, so we'll read some sections of purport and then we can discuss more actually. Of course, there is also another verse in the Padma Purana, anybody knows, which is similar to this. Yeah, so basically, Smartyam sa smartavyam satatam Vishnu, vismartavyam. So basically it says, the overarching rules. There are so many rules and regulations in the Vedas. But the overarching rules is that always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. That is the overarching rule for all other rules and regulations. So, of course, here Rupa Goswami is advising that the essence of all advice, Upadesha Saram, the essence of all advice is that one actually utilize every moment in thinking about Krishna. in remembering Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's holy name, being conscious of Krishna. That is the essence of all advice. That's what he is giving in the text 8 of the Nectar of Instruction. Does anybody know a verse which is related to this particular advice from the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, please.
Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mamai vaishyasi satyam te pratijane prayosime.
Yeah, very nice. I mean, you can tell the translation also.
Always think of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. In this way you will attain me. Of this there is no doubt.
Okay. Yeah, this is the... actually, in fact, Krishna repeats it twice. One in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and one in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And he repeats it in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He says that this is the most confidential knowledge. He gives the knowledge about the Paramatma. He gives the knowledge. He talks about many things in the 18th chapter, but finally he says, "Oh Arjuna, let me give you the most confidential knowledge." And then he gives these two verses. One is the Manmanabha Madbhakto, other one is Sarvadharman Parityaja. You had them. So that is ultimately the of course Krishna mentioning it twice is very, very important. And Prabhupada will explain in this purport why. What is that? Right. So that's a very important instruction. That's why Krishna is repeating it twice. And of course he is doing that for our own benefit. And Prabhupada will explain why. So let's read the purport. Here, since the mind may be one's enemy or one's friend, one has to train the mind to become his friend. There is also a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. This is all verses from the Bhagavad Gita. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, 6th chapter, 5th and 6th verse, he says, Udare tatmanatmanam na atmanam avashadayet atmaiva hi atmano bandhar atmaiva rupuratmanaha. Says one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is a friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. And then the next verse he says, Bandhur atma atmanastasya ena atmaiva atmanajitaha anatmanastu shatrutve varteta atmaiva shatruvat. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of his friends. But for one who has failed to do so, the mind will remain the greatest enemy. So who was our greatest enemy? Our mind. Our own mind. We don't have to look for outside. Yeah. Of course, when the mind is purified and when the mind is attached to Krishna, then it becomes a friend. But as long as the mind is attracted to the glittery nature of this material world, to sense gratification, then the mind becomes the greatest enemy. Why? Because then it entangles the Atma more and more into this material world actually. In fact, the Upanishads, Prabhupada also quotes here the Upanishad. He says, for the man, mind is a cause of bondage and mind is a cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is a cause of bondage and mind detached from sense objects is a cause of liberation. So depending on the disposition of the mind, it becomes our friend or enemy. And who's responsible for the disposition of the mind? Huh? That's us, exactly. We have yielded or trained the mind in a certain way, or yielded to be the mind to be trained in a certain way, and the mind has trained in such a way actually. So it is completely our volition that we have trained either in sense gratification or in Krishna consciousness. So, of course, most of us are in a conditioned state of life, and the mind acts as our enemy most of the time. So we have to retrain the mind to become our friend, which is to actually become absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Again, you can use the mic.
I should not interrupt, but Prabhuji was saying, the mind, you have to observe it. You cannot to control it. When you are observing, you are controlling the mind. Otherwise, mind will controlling you.
Right, we have to be conscious.
Yeah, conscious.
We have to be conscious. That's correct. Then we can actually slowly, of course, becoming conscious is one level of observation, but then also to fix it in the lotus feet of Krishna. That is also the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita and all the acharyas. Let's continue the purport. The Krishna conscious movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only of this life, but also of many, many lives in the past. These impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. That's what we see in our dreams. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. Students of psychology are aware of the mind's various psychological changes. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajatante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadhatat bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So it's a science. And the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada says, how Krishna says this verse. And then the next verse he says, in the previous verse he says, Anta kalecha mameva smaran mukta kalevaram. Iha prati samadbhavam yati nashyatra samshayaha. So whatever one, let me say, from the 8th chapter. So he says that whoever at the end of life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature of this, and there is no doubt. So both these verses talk about the state of being at the time of death. And if one is able to remember Krishna at the time of death, then one will be able to go beyond the cycle of birth and death to Goloka Vrindavan, to Vaikuntha, to Krishna Loka. But if one thinks of something else, and that's exactly what this verse says, whatever state of being one remembers, then he will come back to. So he will come back to that particular state, be it whether thinking about a family member or thinking about any of the millions of things that this world offers, then one will come back and attain that particular state. And that's what Krishna says. And in fact, in that particular purport, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam, Srila Prabhupada actually gives the example of Maharaj Bharat from the Srimad Bhagavatam, where he was a great king, and he actually, he left his palace, his kingdom, his family, all these big opulences, and then he goes to the forest actually to become perfect in devotional life. But unfortunately, he becomes attached to a deer. He left such great things, but then due to circumstances, he becomes attached to a deer. And how he becomes attached to a deer, the reason that sometimes even for good reasons we can become attached to this world. In the name of compassion, in the name of giving shelter, in the name of being the savior. And that's what Maharaj Bharat did actually. So he became attached to a deer, and finally he was just so absorbed in the thoughts of the deer that at the time of death, all he could do was think about the deer. And then he became a deer in the next life. But then he was conscious about his position in the previous life, and in the next life he became Jada Bharat. So that's one example Srila Prabhupada gives. But you can see how tricky Maya is, and how easily we can get, if you're not careful, we can get deviated from the devotional practices and the devotional life. And Prabhupada says here that and the psychological students of psychology are aware of mind's various psychological changes, and the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. So if you are not careful, as Vaisheshika Prabhu many times say, don't dump into the bay, right? There are signs actually. The drains actually go to the bay, so don't dump or trash into the drains actually. So similarly, Jai Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ki Jai. So similarly, we have to be very careful what are we actually putting, or what are we engaging or putting in through our senses. Because ultimately, all that we interact with actually goes into the bay of the mind and the heart. And ultimately they create strong impressions. They create very strong impressions which actually dictate our future life and which dictate our destiny. So spiritual life is, it requires careful cultivation. Prabhupada says bhakti is sort of a cultivation. So we require very careful and conscious cultivation in terms of the regulative practices of devotional services. And in fact, life is compared to be a preparation, and death is compared to an examination. So if we prepare nicely, then we'll be able to come out with flying colors. But if you don't prepare so well, then we will fail in our examination. So one has to carefully mold his or her life so that all these instructions that Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita and through the Acharyas can be executed nicely. And Krishna gives it for a reason. In fact, the next verse in the 8th chapter, Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu ma manushmaridhyacha mayarpito manobuddhir ma me vaishasya samshayaha. After giving this reason, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajatante kalevaram, he says, therefore Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna. And at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. Of course, this is the ultimate goal. We can call our human life successful if we are able to execute this one instruction. It's the same instruction, what Srila Rupa Goswami is saying here, The essence is to utilize one's full time, 24 hours, in absorption of Krishna. And what Krishna says as Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Manashmudichan Manmanabha Madbhakto Madhyajimam. This is the ultimate perfection and ultimate goal of life. Is that we constantly think about Krishna. We become absorbed in Him. We worship Him. We pay obeisance to Him. We become His devotee. And when we do this, then our life can be perfect, because then there is a chance at the time of that we can think about the Lord. So that's how we can mold our life in such a way that these instructions can be executed. What do you think some of the ways we can mold our life so that these, we can execute these instructions? Any thoughts? What are some practical ways we can implement in our lives so these instructions can be executed? Use the mic. Please use the mic. Like Krishna says, right? Manmana bhavat bhakto madhyam bhajanam namaskuru. So ultimately, that is the highest perfection one can attain. So I was just asking the question, what are some practical ways we can come to that level gradually? What are some of the ways we can implement in our lives so that we can come to that level?
Always engage into devotional service.
Okay, can you give some practical example? That's very...
The chanting, sadhana is personally very important.
So chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, you're saying?
Mahamantra, yeah.
Okay. She wants to say something.
Even to be engaged in the same activities as we are doing now, to give up results to Krishna, whether it's donation to the temple, so this is how you can stay connected with the devotional services.
Okay. Anything else?
To remember Krishna when in office, like I don't like when I'm in discussion with colleagues, how to bring Krishna in picture at that point of time.
Right. That's a good point actually. Any?
Following the instruction from the Shastra and Guru.
Right. Follow the instruction from the Shastra and Guru. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, that's a good point. How do we absorb ourselves? It's because the reason we are not able to... one point is that even when we are engaged directly in devotional service of Krishna, we hardly think about Krishna. For example, chanting. When we sit down to chant, then that is when the mind becomes hyperactive. Right? It thinks of all the things that we would have never thought about. So when we sit down to chant, then all different thoughts, all different plannings, everything comes to the mind. Because there is distaste actually, there is no taste that we derive from chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In fact, Rupa Goswami explains why we don't experience taste. He gives the example of person who is jaundiced. So a person who is jaundiced cannot actually experience the taste of any delicious food item. So similarly, he says that why we are not able to taste, the nectar of the holy name. In fact, in another verse, not in the Upadeshamrita, Rupa Goswami says that this one name, Krishna, it produces such an effect. He says that I need millions of mouth. I'm experiencing so much nectar that I need millions of mouth and I need millions of ears to chant and to hear the holy names of Krishna. So why we are not able to experience this taste is because we are a diseased material conditioned life actually, and because of which we are not able to experience the taste. So to become Krishna conscious is actually not a easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. The process is very simple, but it's not very easy. Why it's not easy? Because it has to be done consistently. That's what makes it difficult. And so even when we are engaged in direct devotional service of Krishna, the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we conscious of Krishna? Are we trying to, be attentive when we come to the temple, when we sit in a class, or when we are discussing something, or when we are chanting, or because many times we are just physically present there, but we are spaced out actually, or the mind is somewhere else. So as we become more and more attentive to the chanting, to when we are actually doing the direct devotional service, slowly that will grow. And when that attachment to Krishna grows, then we will be able to be conscious of Him even when we deal with things that are not directly. For a beginner, for an advanced devotee, everything is connected to Krishna. He doesn't see anything disconnected from Krishna. Whether it's being in the temple or being at a workplace, he doesn't see, because he can see the energy of Krishna being permeated everywhere. That is the vision of a Uttamadhikari actually. But for beginners, all like us, it's a gradual progress. As our consciousness, as we develop more and more absorption in Krishna, attachment to Krishna, then slowly that consciousness will pervade us throughout the day. So at our level, we can try to be conscious of Krishna when we are trying to connect with Him directly. That is a big thing. And slowly when that fire increases, then we'll become more and more conscious of Krishna, even when we are not engaged in direct devotional service. What to speak of remembering Krishna? If I hear a lecture in the morning, just an hour or a few hours later, I just totally forget it actually. And then I hear the same lecture again in the evening. All these instructions becomes, it looks very new. So, we have to cultivate being absorbed in Krishna and thinking of Krishna. Yes.
Sorry, Prabhuji, I have a question. Is it also considering as a devotional service when you're preaching? For example, if somebody, even at work, to your colleagues,
Right.
when you're reciting some parts, you're not saying directly where it's from, but you can recite some knowledge if it's correlated with that situation or something. So this is also, is it considered as...
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is how...
Absolutely. In fact, that's why in the neophyte state, Prabhupada never advised his disciples to go and chant 24 hours. Many devotees try to do that, to go and chant 24 hours in Vrindavan or in some holy places, but Prabhupada never recommended it. He said, there has to be a certain level of qualification for one to be able to do that. So we need a good mix actually. We need a good mix of, we need nourishment for our soul, for our mind, which is through the chanting of the holy names. We need nourishment for our intellect, So that's why we have to read Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we need some practical service also, where we can engage our senses, our intelligence, our mental faculty. And so the practical service will help us to actually remember or connect with Krishna. So preaching, book distribution, all these different kinds of services, practical services will help us to remember Krishna. Because we ultimately, either in preaching or book distribution, we're trying to do that service for Krishna. That's why it cannot be done as a routine thing. It cannot be done mechanically. Even after a few years into Krishna consciousness, things can become very mechanical. Chanting can become routine. Chanting can become mechanical. The services that we do can be mechanical. And very soon it will become a burden. So that's why we have to keep hearing and associate with devotees who have the higher taste. And from that, what springs will the faith, we will get the faith to actually do it. It's not one of the check marks. A devotional service means you do it with feeling and do it as an offering to Krishna. So it cannot be done mechanically.
So sometimes this thing can become sentimental, like you are doing some work but you're trying to offer something even though you don't feel from the heart. So it can become some sentimental offering. So how to deal with that?
Well, initially it can be a conscious thing, you put a reminder in your calendar or a note, okay, I have to. It can be a conscious thing. So, it has to be, one has to understand what level of advancement he is at. So, we have to have an honest assessment of where we are at and where we have to go. We cannot imitate where we have to go, ultimately. We have to honestly assess, okay, this is my level actually. I don't have spontaneous devotion to Krishna. At the same time, these are the instructions of my Guru, these are the instructions of the scriptures. And this is what Krishna is asking me to do. And this is what Srila Prabhupada and the all Acharyas are asking me to do. So I'm just trying to follow sincerely. And so that's where the sincerity comes into picture. Of course, from the Damodar pastime, actually Krishna consciousness is a gift. Krishna consciousness comes because of mercy. Generally we get, even in devotional life, we actually bring in the doer mentality. The outside world, it's all about doer, the doer mentality, Prakriti kriya manani gune karma saha ahankara vimudatma karta hamiti manyate, ahankara vimudatma karta ham, oh, I am the doer. So in the outside world, it's all about the doer mentality. I have accomplished this, I have produced this result, and what happens is we bring in the same mentality even into devotional life. By my sadhana, I will, get bhakti. By my following the regulative principles of devotionals, I will attain bhakti. But it doesn't work like that. Ultimately, Krishna consciousness is, bhakti is awakened by the mercy of Krishna. And that's what the whole Damodar Leela shows, is that our endeavor is there to show our sincerity and seriousness to Krishna. But ultimately it's Krishna's mercy which is going to gift us the attitude of bhakti. Does that answer your question?
But even to do endeavor, you have to know like who is Krishna. So that knowledge, how does it come? Does it come through mercy, right?
Well, that comes through the devotee's mercy. Especially in, our present age, anybody who is coming in touch with, the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita or Krishna consciousness or chanting of the holy names, it comes through. Thank you. It comes through the mercy of the devotees. Because devotees, of course, it comes through the mercy of the parampara and through the devotees. Krishna himself is neutral. Even though his heart is that everybody comes back to him, he doesn't interfere with the free will of the living entities. But of course, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the mood of Srimati Radharani, he becomes more benevolent. He actually wants to distribute the fruit of love of Godhead to everyone. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, I have so many fruits, but I have only so much that I have only 2 hands and I can only do so much. So that's why he orders or instructs everyone to be, especially people born in India, he gives a special instruction that they perfect their own lives and then become a guru. So ultimately, Krishna, the seed of bhakti is passed, seed of Krishna consciousness is passed by the mercy of devotees.
So that means like why not devotees can give that seed to everybody?
No,
Why only selected souls?
No, we are trying. we are trying actually. All of us are trying in one way or the other, right? We go out on book distribution, we go out on Harinam, we have temple, we have programs. We're trying our best actually to give it to as many people as possible.
No, actually I didn't understand. So the seed is given, right? So why not everybody accepts the seed? Why? So
yeah, that's because they don't have a fertile heart. See, that's where piety comes into play. Krishna says in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Esham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karmanaha te dvanda mohanar mukta yajante mam dhritavrtaha. So Krishna says one cannot take to my devotional service. Esham tvantagatam papam, one's I'll just read the translation. 7th chapter. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated are freed from the dualities of delusion. And they engage themselves in my service with determination. So persons who have eradicated and are freed from dualities and sin and dualities of delusion and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, they can take to devotional service with determination. So not everybody. So the piety actually refers to the fertile heart. So one who is pious, he will be able to just take it like that. But sometimes, people just appreciate they just want to appreciate devotees. So when that happens, then there is Agyata Sukriti. Then Krishna, he intervenes. But Krishna doesn't intervene directly. And generally people who are pious, they'll be able to, but still piety itself doesn't give rise to bhakti. Just because somebody is pious doesn't mean that he will get bhakti. Because bhakti has no Bhakti has no source other than bhakti. So piety cannot give rise to bhakti. Nothing in this world can give rise to bhakti. Only the bhakti can come when it's given to us from another devotee's heart. And we can accept that seed favorably when if we have a very pious mentality. Then we'll be attracted to such a pure devotee just like that. If our heart is pious. But if our heart is not pious, then it will take some time. It will take, but still Krishna, even when such people, if they appreciate a devotee, then Krishna takes them very seriously. There is Agyata Sukriti.
But yeah, that's how is it causeless? Because it requires you to be pious. So that means that unpious person cannot get Krishna. So how is it causeless mercy then? It depends on the individual that he's getting the mercy or not.
Right. It is it becomes costless when so that's why devotees go out and engage in outreach. So if a person is not pious, he will not enter the temple. Or he will enter and he will not be interested actually. So that is why devotees go out of their way to actually reach out to people of all classes. And they may, so people who are outside, they may not understand the whole significance of either the chanting or the books or any other devotees' activities. But even if they appreciate it a little bit, then it gives the opening for Krishna to start giving his mercy actually. And in fact, in one of the purport, Srila Prabhupada says devotees are more merciful than Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna uses his devotees as the instruments of his mercy. And then they go out because they know what is Krishna's heart and what is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission to do. But ultimately, these verses in the Bhagavad Gita, the second chapter verse also, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya bharatachesam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhana vidhyate. All these verses talk about the same thing. One cannot take to devotional service a determination if the sins have not been eradicated, or if one is bewildered. If one is bewildered by material opulence and sense gratification, then it's the same situation. You cannot take to devotional life with determination because you're going to get carried away with other things of this world. Is that okay? So we'll read from the second paragraph. So if somebody want to read at the time of death, you'll have to read from that.
At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life.
So
on the other hand,
anybody experience this? When there are things which are very congenial that just pops up in our mind? It does, right? I mean, it may be something that you've seen 2 decades ago, but it just suddenly pops out of nowhere actually. And guess what? And that determines our future destiny. Whatever impressions that we hold in our mind every day, the actions that we perform, every action, moment to moment, every cycle of thinking, feeling and willing, the action that we perform is actually creating our future bodies. It's tough. It's and that's why Srila Prabhupada also in many some of the purports he says that spiritual life is like a razor's edge. You have to be very careful.
On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to the spiritual world, Golok Vrindavan. This process of transmigration is very subtle. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their minds in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. Similarly, the tongue should be trained to speak only of Krishna and to taste only Krishna Prasad. Srila Rupa Goswami further advises, Tishthan Vraje. One should live in Vrindavan or any part of Vrajabhumi. Vrajabhumi, or the land of Vrindavan, is supposed to be 84 kroshas in area. 1 krosh equals 2 square miles. When one makes Vrindavan his residence, he should take shelter of an advanced devotee there. In this way, one should always think of Krishna and his pastimes. This is further elucidated by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Krishnam smaram janam chasya preshtham nija samihitam tattat katha ratas chashu kuriyat vasam vraje sada. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Raj and always engage in Krishnam smaram janam chasya preshtham, the remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. By following in the footsteps of such associates and by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anybody remember where the process of transmigration is discussed in the Bhagavad Gita? Which chapter? Second chapter, yes. Yeah, second chapter is right. Any other chapters? Eighth, yes. Any others? Yeah, 13th, there are, 15th chapter. I was mainly thinking about the 15th chapter. In fact, let's... this is a serious thing actually. Krishna says, the living entity in the material world carries his different conception of life from one body to another as the air carries aroma. Thus he takes one kind of body and quits it to take another. The living entity thus taking another gross body obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose and sense of touch which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Yeah, so as the air carries aroma, so we carry different conceptions of life. And thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So that's how the whole transmigration happens. And that's why Srila Prabhupada says here that the process of transmigration is very subtle, and therefore Srila Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their minds in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. It's a tall order actually, to always think about Krishna and to cultivate that through the regulative principles of devotional service. And for that we'll have to mold our lives. practical, from a practical perspective. We'll have to mold our lives in such a way. In fact, that is the first two symptoms of surrender. There are 6 symptoms for surrender. Anybody know what are the first 2 symptoms? Yeah.
So one is accepting. I don't know the order.
No, that's okay.
I can tell you. One is accepting Krishna as one's maintainer.
Okay.
The other one is accepting Krishna as one's protector. Accepting everything favorable to the devotional service and rejecting everything unfavorable to devotional service. And having complete humility and surrendering oneself to Krishna. These are the 6.
Right. Prabhupada gives it in the 18th chapter, 66th verse, Sarvadharman Parityaja, he gives this. So, let me just read the word. It's a nice verse actually. Anukulisha sankalpa pratikulisha varjanam rakshashayati vishvasho goptartve varnam tata atmanikshepa karpanya shadvida sharanagati. So these are the 6 symptoms of surrender. So the first 2 are anukulisha sankalpa, doing things that are favorable for, or accepting things which are favorable for devotional service. So that is the first symptom of surrender. And then pratikulesha varjanam, rejecting things which are unfavorable for devotional life. So that is the second symptom. So if we can, if we apply all these different principles, then we can practically arrange our life in such a way that we can utilize as much as time that is available to us in engaging in one or the other form of devotional service. You can use the mic.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but these principles are also mentioned in Nectar of Instruction in the 2nd or 3rd verse.
That's why we are reading from Nectar of Instruction only.
Oh, never mind. Sorry.
It's the text 8 actually.
You mentioned something about this also mentioned in the purport of the 1866. Is this
Yeah.
Okay.
In Bhagavad Gita, yes.
Sorry, my mistake. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Yeah, in 1866, Srila Prabhupada discusses this actually. So we carefully, we use our intelligence, and then we think about the things that are necessary in our life, and then reject those things that are not favorable for devotional life, and accept those things which are favorable for devotional life. Right. In fact, that's what Vaisheshika Prabhu, in his lectures, he calls that as VLC, voluntary life changes. In fact, I was thinking about this today morning. I think we should think about this every day. What is that I can improve upon? What are the things that I can, where are the knots that I have to tighten? And what are the things that I have to improve? And what are the changes that I need to do so that I can execute all these different instructions? It can be, getting up early in the morning, or adjusting here, adjusting that. So as we keep practically, if we mold our life in such a way that we can come one step closer to following or implementing these instructions that we have, then our life can become a success story. You want to read the next paragraph? Anybody else? I want to read the next paragraph.
In the transcendental realm of
one more point I wanted to say was, we have all these different kinds of programs. Page, what is the page? Become a sage, page by page. And then we have the chant, we have our chanting of our rounds. And then we can have our favorite. For example, we can also recite the Nectar of Instruction, just 11 verses actually. We can recite that, we can memorize verses. So we can fill our day with all these kind of activities practically. Like you can have a checklist. You can have like chanting 16 rounds, and then reading one chapter of Bhagavad Gita, reading one chapter of Srimad, or reading 5 pages of Srimad, something like that. And then memorizing some verses and reading Nectar of Instruction and some service actually. So if most of the time, grihasthas, time is the most precious thing actually. Because we are, as grihasthas, we are engaged with so many different things like work and then family and service, and on top of that, the sadhana and all these different things. So unless we can manage our time, it's going to be difficult to do everything or to cover everything. So we can have a list of things that I would like to do, and then slowly we can, implement some of those things, and then as we go by in our lives, we can slowly increase it to do more and more things, and finally all the 24 hours will be blocked with one thing or the other, our devotional service actually. So that's how we can plan our lives like that. Yeah, I see, Grihastha ashram, like how you have the toy car, right? Some of these toy cars, you actually pull it behind and pull behind, and then you leave the car and then it just races ahead, right? So I see Grihastha life to be like that, where you you're really searching for time to do devotional service, and then but you're so packed that you're not able to find as much as time you would like to actually engage in devotional service. So that's like pulling the car back, and then slowly that intensity will grow, and finally when the right time comes according to Krishna's will, then you can race ahead like that. But we'll have to create the intensity from day one. Create the intensity by completely engaging in devotional service. Yeah, go ahead.
In the transcendental realm of Rajadhama, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates, and one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna and should follow in his footsteps. This method is applicable both in the stage of sadhana, spiritual practices executed while in the stage of bondage, and in the stage of sadhya, God realization, when one is a Siddha Purusha or a spiritually perfect soul. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse: one who has not yet developed the interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, quality, pastimes, and so forth. In this way, after developing a taste for such a thing, one should try to live in Vrindavana and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna, Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of devotional service.
Yeah, can somebody read the next paragraph?
In the neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. This is called Shravana Dasa, the stage of hearing. By constantly hearing the transcendental holy name of Krishna and hearing of his transcendental form, qualities and pastimes, one can attain to the stage of acceptance called Varana Dasha. When one attains this,
So it's just so it all starts from hearing. Now, so right, just by hearing, one will develop more and more advanced stages in Krishna consciousness, which here Srila Prabhupada will describe the different advanced stages. How just from hearing, it ultimately comes to remembering and being attached to Krishna. It will be explained here. But it's pretty much similar to what is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam also. So it all starts from Srinmata Sokata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtanaha, Hirdayantasto hi abhadrani vidinoti suratsatam. So by hearing about Krishna, so that's why I said you will have to, there are so many devotional, there is so much flavor in devotional activities. You can read Bhagavatam, you can read Bhagavad Gita, you can hear a lecture from Srila Prabhupada, from his disciples. So you can arrange your life that all these things can be packed in. Hearing is very, very important actually. Hearing is so important because ultimately the more we hear, the more it's likely to stick into our mind and intelligence, and ultimately it will help, it will lead to the transformation of heart actually. So in the Bhagavatam, it's very important to hear from our gurus. It's very, very important. And that's our connection too with the Guru Parampara. So in the Bhagavatam it says, Srinmata Sokata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. So when we hear about Krishna Katha, then Srinmata Sokata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto hi abhadrani vidinoti surtatam. Then what happens? When we hear about Krishna, then Krishna from within the heart becomes very merciful. And vidinoti surutsatam. And he actually begins to cleanse our heart of all the unwanted things. So that is his kind reciprocation. And then the other stages come actually. The Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, talks about the whole progression like that. So it all starts with Srinmata. And again, 7th chapter also, Prabhupada quotes all these different verses, but Krishna says, Tat Shrunu, Maya Sakta Manapartha, Yogam Yunjan Madashriha. What is the rest of the verse? Maya Sakta Manapartha, Yogam Yunjan Madashriha, Asamshayam Samagramam, Yatagya Shashi. Tachruno. So he says, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full free from doubt. Now hear, O son of Pritha. So again, it's about hearing actually. And then Prabhupada there quotes, Srinmata Svakada Krishna, it starts with that. And then Nashta Prayasha Bhadresha. So what happens? You have Krishna Katha, then there's Hridayantasto hi abhadrani. All the unwanted things actually starts to clear away. Like how when the sun comes, then the fog starts to dissipate. So similarly, the smoke, in our heart, the dust in our heart begins to it begins to clear away actually. That's why the next verse comes, Nashta Prayasha Bedreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtake. So Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, by serving, the devotees, Srimad Bhagavatam and the holy names, then automatically all the unwanted things starts to clear away. And then when the heart becomes pure, or it's becoming purer and purer, then tada rajastamo bhava kama lobhada yashya chete tirana vidyam sthitam satte prasidati. Then the influence of mode of passion and mode of ignorance reduces. And then one comes and situates himself in the mode of goodness, sattva guna. And then evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata bhagavad tattva vijnana mukta sangha sajayate. Then one can devote himself with one pointed attention to Krishna. So it's a very scientific process actually, which is happening here. But it all starts from the simple process of hearing Krishna Katha. Yeah, you had a point.
So, Prabhu, in the previous paragraph, it was mentioned about progressive regulative principles. And I was wondering, why is it mentioned, what is the significance of progressive here? Because the regulative principles, we follow all of them at once. By progressive, does it mean like you follow one and then the next, or there are more regulative principles in the higher, once you get to the advanced stages, something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, of course, there are the 4 basic regulative principles we have, but as one advances in Krishna consciousness, then one's need and one's requirements also changes. Actually, in the sense, I mean, for me to stay at this level, I only need to do this much. But for me to stay on this level, I need to do more actually. So unless until the spontaneous one develops a spontaneous loving service to Krishna, even then one has to follow the regular. One follows because it's. One has to be sure that it's protected, and it's a rare thing to attain pure devotional service. So as one progresses in devotional service, the requirements also changes. So one who begins and chants, one who is in the beginning stages of devotional service, there are certain, he has certain needs. Okay, I can, for my state, chanting 2 rounds is okay, and I'm happy with that and everything. But as one progresses in devotional service, one's needs change. One becomes more introspective. One, fills with more and more devotional engagements, and one needs those things. Actually, it's not an optional thing. One needs. There is a need for all those things. Yeah. So we were reading. Yeah, please.
When one attains this stage, he becomes attached to the hearing of Krishna Katha. When one is able to chant in ecstasy, he attains the stage of Smarana Vastha, the stage of remembering, recollection, absorption, meditation, constant remembrance, and trance are the 5 items of progressive Krishna Smarana. At first, remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted at intervals, but later, remembrance proceeds uninterrupted.
So this is the answer to your question. You were asking before, how can I think about or remember Krishna in the office? So, these are different stages of consciousness. As we evolve and progress spiritually, then our first duty is to remember Krishna when we are in contact with the direct devotional service, actually. But as that increases, then it will go from the interrupted to uninterrupted stage.
When remembrance is uninterrupted, it becomes concentrated and is called meditation. When meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called anusmriti. By uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one enters the stage of samadhi, or spiritual trance. After smaranadasa or samadhi has fully developed, the soul comes to understand his original constitutional position. At that time, he can perfectly and clearly understand his eternal relationship with Krishna. That is called sampati dasa, the perfection of life.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing, right? I cannot discuss much on these points because I can discuss about remembrance is interrupted, because that is the level I am at. But Prabhupada very nicely gives the different stages as we go on continuing our regulative devotional services. First, it's very interrupted remembrance, and then from there it goes on to concentrated, and then it's called meditation, and then meditation expands and becomes constant. It's called anusmriti, and then one enters, when that increases, uninterrupted, unceasing anusmriti, one enters the stage of samadhi or spiritual trance. Of course, we can compare this. There is another, so Shravana Dasa, and then Smarana Vasta, and then Krishna, and then Samadhi, like that. We can compare this to the ladder that Srila Rupa Goswami has given also. It talks about Adho Shraddha. It starts with a little bit of faith, and then Adho Shraddha, Bhajana Kriya, and then Anartha Nivritti. So Anartha Nivritti is a stage which is equivalent to the interrupted remembrance, where we have so many anarthas, we have the material desires and so on and so forth. So we are not able to completely absorb ourselves in Krishna. But as the stage of Anartha Nivritti, which is removing the unwanted things and coming to Nishtha, then one's remembrance becomes uninterrupted slowly, and then progresses like that. I think Anusmriti means it's Asakti and beyond, actually. So you can compare this to the ladder that Srila Rupa Goswami has given. Yeah, we can read the next paragraph. But it all starts from, that's the key point, it all starts from hearing. And as Vaisheshika Prabhu says, keep the vibrations going. So if we are sincere about that, then ultimately we'll be able to come to perfection gradually.
Chaitanya Charitamrita advises those who are neophytes to give up all kinds of motivated desires to simply engage in the regulative devotional service of the Lord according to the directions of his scripture. In this way, a neophyte can gradually develop attachment for Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, and so forth. When one has developed such attachment, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna even without following the regulative principles. This stage is called Raga Bhakti, or devotional service in spontaneous love. At that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. This is called Ragunaga Bhakti. Ragunaga Bhakti or spontaneous devotional service can be executed in the Santa Rasa when one aspires to like Krishna's cows or the stick or the flute in the hand of Krishna or the flowers around Krishna's neck. In the Dasya Raga, one follows in the footsteps of servants like Sitraka, Patraka or Rataka. In the friendly Sakhya Rasa, one can become a friend like Baladev, Srimada or Sudama. In the Vatsala Rasa, characterized by paternal affection, one can become like Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. And in the Madhuraya Rasa, characterized by conjugal love, one can become like Srimati Radharani or her lady friends such as Lalita and her serving maids, like Rupa and Rati. This is the essence of all instruction in the matter of devotional service.
Right. Yeah. So there are two kinds of devotional service. One is Raganuga Bhakti and then there is Sadhana Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti means when one can spontaneously love Krishna. Right now we spontaneously love the objects of the material world. But there is a stage where when one awakens the Raganuga Bhakti, then one spontaneously loves Krishna. But of course, most of us are not there yet, so we follow Sadhana Bhakti. So there is a Raganuga Bhakti and then there is Sadhana Bhakti. So Sadhana Bhakti is where we actually follow devotional service under the guidance of a guru and regulative principles of devotional service. Basically, so many rounds a day and one chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day and so on and so forth. So these are regulative principles of devotional service. But ultimately it will help us to come to the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. And then once we attain to that platform, then Rupa Goswami advises here that one follows the footsteps of the devotees of Raja, according to a particular bhava that he has cultivated or attracted to worshipping Krishna in a particular way, actually. So that is the text 8. I was thinking, since we have a few more minutes, we will just go through in chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna also discusses the different levels of devotional service or how one can approach him. Since it's related to, we just discussed about Raganuga Bhakti and Sadhana Bhakti, I thought we'll just read the different levels of approaches that Krishna recommends actually from top to bottom. He recommends like that. So we can read from 12:8. He gives that 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, we'll read one per Prabhu, if there is time. Yeah, this is the... So, in 12.8, he starts with the topmost level, where he says, Mayeva mana advashta mayi buddhim niveshyasa niveshyasi mayeva atha urdhvam na samshaya. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. So this is Krishna's first instruction, to always fix our mind and intelligence upon him. Of course, this is possible when only one is in spontaneous or platform of Raganuga Bhakti or spontaneous devotional service. And then the next verse, (12:9), he says, "My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me." So this is the verse which discusses about the sadhana bhakti, the regulative principles of devotional service. In fact, we can read this purport actually. Anybody wants to read the first paragraph? And then we can take turns to read each paragraph.
In this verse, two different processes of Bhakti Yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For this second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna.
Yeah, then somebody else can read the next paragraph.
Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified, and in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master also is not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there is no question of love. But for spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses.
Anybody else? Next paragraph.
This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart, and their love of God is manifested in different ways, but it is contaminated by material association. Now the heart has to be purified of the material association, and that dormant natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That's the whole process.
To practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. One should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple and offer prayers and chant Hare Krishna. Then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook foodstuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations that one should follow, and one should constantly hear the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice can help anyone rise to the level of love of God, and then he is sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice of Bhakti Yoga, under the rules and regulations, with the direction of a spiritual master, will surely bring one to the stage of love of God.
Thank you. So this is the process of sadhana bhakti. As Srila Prabhupada very nicely explains, one should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple, offer prayers, chant Hare Krishna. So there is a whole program that has been given to us. So as we implement, this process of sadhana bhakti in our life, then as we accept this process of sadhana bhakti, then one can rise up to the level of Raganuga Bhakti, where one can spontaneously love Krishna because he has developed the attachment for the Supreme by following the sadhana bhakti process. So the next verse, Krishna says, if you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me you will come to the perfect stage. So this is direct devotional service actually. When we are not able to follow the... that's why we have a good mix that Srila Prabhupada has given us. we have the process of regulative principles of devotional service, and then we have some practical engagement, which directly connects with working for Krishna. Like that. So by working for Krishna, like for example, sweeping the temple hall, by engaging in some practical devotional service, what happens? Then the heart becomes, the heart and the mind becomes ready to engage in the regulative principles of devotional service. And of course, this also applies to, parting of one's results for Krishna. That way one works for Krishna also, by parting the results, some of the results. And then the next verse says, if however you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act, giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. Of course, then Krishna goes a little bit below Bhakti Yoga, the whole mark of Bhakti Yoga. This is more like Nishkama. He comes to the platform of this is Nishkama Karma Yoga actually. And then he says, if you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation, and better than meditation is renunciation of fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So these are the different levels Krishna gives of how we can actually move around in this world. What is our level of consciousness? So we can see where we fit ourselves in. And depending on that, we can slowly, from whichever level or whichever platform we are in, we can slowly try to rise above to the next levels. But ultimately, Krishna gives the topmost level being to be completely attached to Him with mind as intelligence fixed on Him. That is the highest goal of that is the highest perfection, and that is the highest goal. So we'll have to somehow come there. Any comments or questions before we?
Meditation in this verse is same or is different from chanting meditatively?
No, meditation is more. This meditation, if you look at the purport, you will. Prabhupada, if one is, so he writes, the sort of, in the cultivation of knowledge there are processes which make one understand that one himself is a supreme, and that sort of meditation is preferred if one is unable to engage in devotional service. If one is not able to meditate in such a way, then there are prescribed duties as enjoined in the Vedic literatures. Like that. So this is more like impersonal meditation. Yeah. Any other comments?
Prabhuji, we see this two words, or this one is self-situated. Can you please elaborate on that? Like we have that in the previous verse.
Can we go to the previous verse, Ramananda Prabhu? Right. Yeah, Krishna uses this word multiple places. I think he uses the word in the second chapter also. Second chapter of, I think, 43rd verse. So he says the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes, be free from all dualities, from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. And I think he uses this in multiple places in the 5th chapter also. So, self-situated means, situated on the spiritual platform. Right. So, especially in the verse that I just read, in the 2nd chapter, Krishna says, the Vedas deal with the three modes of material nature, but we are transcendental to the three modes of material nature because we are spiritual in nature. So he says, trans these effects of the influence of the three modes and be situated in your real self. So on the spiritual platform and on the soul platform, actually. So that's how I understand it. Right. Okay, so we will stop there and then we will get ready for the Aarti ceremony.